A day of rage, violence in occupied East Jerusalem after Israel imposes new security measures at the al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Jordan is responsible for one of Islam's holiest sites, so why is Israel making the decisions? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami Zaidan. World leaders are demanding Israel honours the status quo that governs the al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem. They fear new security restrictions imposed by Israel could trigger unrest across the occupied territory. Well, the state of Jordan has been the custodian of all Muslim and Christian sites in Jerusalem. That was agreed to again in the peace agreement between Israel and Jordan in 1994. Israel's recent security measures, though, are creating tension with Palestinians who see them as an extension of the occupation. On Friday, Muslim worshippers refused to perform their prayers inside the mosque as thousands of Palestinians rallied across the region. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has cut short a trip to China. He's urging the US to intervene in the crisis. So, is Israel abiding by the status quo agreement? What is Jordan's role as custodian of these holy sites? Some of the questions we'll put to our guests in a moment. But first, let's take a closer look at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. It's home to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosques, two of Islam's holiest sites. To Jews, of course, it's Temple Mount, and they pray at its western wall. For centuries, the compound has been under various Islamic religious authorities known as waqfs, and since the 1994, the state of Jordan has been the custodian of the compound known as the Noble Sanctuary. Well, Israel occupied East Jerusalem in 1967, annexed the territory in a move never accepted by the UN. But Israel recognized the authority of the Jordan-Jerusalem Islamic Waqf to continue to manage the site. The occupation, though, has imposed measures relating to security, maintenance, excavations and non-Muslim visits, which the Waqf authority says violates its role. Now, under a delicate agreement, Jews are allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound under close supervision, but only Muslims are allowed to actually pray there. Let's bring our guests into the show. In Jerusalem, we have joining us Mustafa Abu Sway. He's a professor at Al-Quds University and a scholar on the Al-Aqsa Mosque and a member of the Islamic Waqf Council. And also joining us from Jerusalem is Ambassador Alan Baker. He's the director of the Institute for Contemporary Affairs in Jerusalem and a former legal advisor to Israel's foreign ministry. Joins us via Skype. Welcome to you both. Perhaps we could start with Ambassador Alan Baker. As you know, the Jordanian Jerusalem Awqaf authorities, they're the ones internationally recognized to be the managers of the site. Wouldn't it be better to let them manage the site? Wouldn't that be better for everybody involved?
Well, it's difficult for me to think that they will prevent armed gunmen from coming out of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and shooting people. The question is, what would they do? How would they cope with this? Even if you go according to the laws of occupation, the occupying power has the responsibility to ensure security. And this is exactly what Israel is doing, nothing more, nothing less.
All right, let's take that point then to Professor Mustafa. Israel, as the occupying power, has to establish security. What would the Islamic Waqf or any other authority there do?
Who would protect us against these security forces? In October 1990, Israel committed a massacre inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and we have 21 people, the names of which are written on the entrance to the cemetery adjacent to Lion's Gate to Bab al-Asbat. They include elderly men and women. So we need protection from these security forces. It's any solution that addresses security concerns without looking at the political situation and the larger picture is definitely incomplete.
All right, talking about the larger picture then, Ambassador Baker, when you look at the complaints which the Islamic Awqaf authorities, the Jerusalem Jordanian Awqaf authorities have repeatedly made about the sort of Israeli measures which are being taken, they relate to things like maintenance, they relate to renovation, they relate to the regulation of visitors within the compound, issues which fall within, most people would agree, regular administrative affairs. To give an example, they say in their report of 2017, April the 28th, which they filed with UNESCO, that until the beginning of 2017, the Awqaf authorities say that Israeli occupation authorities continue to ban the implementation of more than 24 restoration, consolidation and renovation projects. Some of the examples they give are things like completing the firefighting system, installing a metal and glass umbrella, fixing a water pipe next to Bab al-Majlis. Surely, as Professor Mustafa says, the context here is a much bigger political struggle for who has authority and sovereignty, is it not?
Look, you're bringing in a very wide range of subjects. In principle, and I took part in the negotiations with the PLO on the issue of what is going to be the subject of the negotiations. And the issue of Jerusalem is on the negotiating table. In other words, the whole question of who will have ultimate control or sovereignty, or whether it will be some type of shared sovereignty or whatever, is still on the negotiating table. And if and when the Palestinian leadership decides to come back to the negotiating table, then this will be one of the issues that will be solved. In the meantime, it's Israel's responsibility to ensure security, and that's all. Now, you mentioned
sorry, Ambassador, but if we could bring it back to point, my question is, regardless of the negotiations, there is an international recognition that there is the Jordanian Jerusalem Waqf Authority that's supposed to manage things like broken water pipes and firefighting systems.
No, there's no such thing as some type of international acknowledgement. I drafted the article in the peace treaty between Israel and Jordan, which gives Jordan a status in negotiations on the issue of Jerusalem, and acknowledges Jordan's role with respect to the Temple Mount. But this doesn't, as you say, it doesn't give full custodianship to neither to Jordan nor to the Waqf. As soon as there's a security problem, then this is Israel's task to ensure that this security problem no longer exists. Nothing more. Israel has got no aim of changing this, subject to, of course, the negotiations. The only thing that Israel has to do at the moment is to ensure that gunmen won't come out of the mosque and shoot people, innocent people. That's all.
All right, I'll pick you up in a moment on your statement there that Israel has no intention to change things. But before, let me give Mustafa Sawai an opportunity to come back in that. There is no international recognition for complete custodianship, Ambassador Baker says, for Jordan. He helped draft the agreement in 1994. Do you agree with that?
Well, the international community, which basically represented by the United Nations, the UN Security Council, rejected the 1980 Israeli basic law that considers Jerusalem a unified eternal city of Israel. There are at least 6 UN Security Council resolutions that continue to consider East Jerusalem as occupied Palestinian territory, and this is why the foreign embassies are in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem. Much could be said about the legality of the issue, but let's go back to maintenance, to these projects, the King Abdullah II projects, these more than 24 projects that Israel continues to impair or basically hinder the implementation of these projects, and not only major projects, but even very, very minute, very mundane issues like changing a rusty water pipe in the eastern section of the mosque. We have 2 residential engineers on site. One of them, al-Halaq, an elderly, almost retiring. He went with a couple of plumbers to change these rusty pipes, and the 2 police officers came to him and they told him, stop for a minute. ask for a permission, and then you can resume work. This is really the mentality. This is really the approach that they have when they deal with the Waqf. It's not. It's a total disrespect to the peace treaty that they have signed with Jordan.
Present the alternative, perhaps Israeli view on this. They might say, can this be justified in terms of security? That somehow these 24 renovation projects, rusty water pipes, are a matter of security.
No, I'm not even claiming that. I wouldn't presume to claim that. Look, Israel,
so why don't
Israel is in control.
Why does it become an issue? I mean, can you see how perhaps Palestinians would see an attempt to block renovation projects, installing firefighting systems, fixing water pipes, as more than simply as an attempt to establish Israeli control and sovereignty over the area?
Look, Israel control is already there. Israel law applies there.
Only in Israel's opinion, though, correct? As Professor Mustafa pointed out, there are UN resolutions which don't recognize that.
Yes, but you see, Professor Mustafa is referring to resolutions from the 1980s. The Security Council and the General Assembly endorsed the Oslo Accords, according to which the PLO and Israel agreed that the issue of Jerusalem will be a negotiating issue between them. And pending such time, Israel remains in control as it has been since 1967. Now, if Israel is in control, then Israel is also responsible for planning and zoning and building. And any building that goes on, therefore, has to be coordinated with the Israeli planning and zoning authorities. Now, one example, perhaps, is the fact that the Waqf excavated the floor in order to build a new mosque, and they threw into the garbage thousands and thousands of very valuable Second Temple archaeological exhibits, and only because the Israelis managed to recover these, they weren't destroyed. So that there are things that have to be coordinated, and the Waqf and the Israeli authorities are indeed coordinating these things.
This is, let me read to Ambassador Baker, UNESCO's ruling here. This is not from 1980s.
Well, I'm sorry. UNESCO's
this is
ruling
from 2000. If I may, I'll let you finish, Ambassador. Perhaps I'll take it to Professor Souei. International bodies like UNESCO have said on point 5 of its May the 2nd, 2017 ruling, after looking at complaints of how Israel has imposed measures, it has said in both East Jerusalem as well as the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, and it said, quote, legislative and administrative measures and actions taken by Israel, the occupying power, which have altered or purport to alter the character and status of the holy city of Jerusalem, and in particular the basic law in Jerusalem, are null and void and must be rescinded forthwith. Is UNESCO wrong?
Look, you're quoting a resolution by the UNESCO World Heritage Committee that's been wholly condemned and completely put into doubt, not just by most of the countries of the world, but also by the Director General of UNESCO itself, because it's
so you're telling viewers UNESCO is wrong, sir, with all due respect?
UNESCO is very wrong, and this resolution is a political resolution adopted as part of an automatic political majority.
Right, so let's give Professor Mustafa a chance to come in. We haven't heard from him in a while. Let's give Professor Mustafa a chance to come in. UNESCO's got it wrong.
Yes.
Obviously, only a resolution in favor of Israel would be considered right from this perspective. So anytime the UN body issues a resolution, I would not say in favor of, but really respecting international law, respecting the previous resolutions, not only over the years, but over decades of these resolutions, and that's continue to stipulate East Jerusalem is occupied. And I have to stop for a minute and refer to what Mr. Baker said about the Second Temple era artifacts. He should be very accurate, because he should have said Second Temple era time. It's basically his Second Temple artifacts. We know very well that Israeli archaeologists do not agree on this. Israeli experts do not agree on this. This was a dumping site, much later dumping site from the time of the Crusaders. Any claims to the contrary are baseless. Let's go back to the end result.
Gentlemen, let's not get bogged down too much in too much historical discussion about the last hundreds or thousands of years. If we can keep the focus perhaps on now, let us talk about the wider context of what's going on and why people can get so excited about something like a metal detector. Is it not true, Ambassador, that all of this is going on against the backdrop of changes which are being made in the nature of not only the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem, but East Jerusalem as a whole? Here, let me read to you an Amnesty International briefing of 2017, February the 14th, which says, there are approximately 621,000 settlers currently living in the occupied West Bank, including 200,000 in East Jerusalem, in contravention, Amnesty say, of international law. Israel also severely restricts Palestinian construction in East Jerusalem. As a result, 90,000 Palestinians are at risk of being displaced from their homes. This makes way for the continued construction and expansion of illegal Israeli settlements. Isn't that the context, Ambassador, of what's going on?
No, absolutely not. You're quoting to me things that are initiated as political resolutions and political messages that adopt one side of the whole thing. As I've said,
surely,
twice,
Ambassador, you're not suggesting Amnesty is politically biased, is it?
Kindly, please let me finish my sentence. The issue of Jerusalem is a negotiating issue. And the fact that you're using expressions like occupied East Jerusalem and one thing or another, these are political expressions. This is disputed territory.
I'm using the terminology used in Amnesty's report. It says occupied.
Well, but you assume that Amnesty and UNESCO are organizations that genuinely are concerned with humanitarian and cultural issues. Then I suggest that you look very carefully into the recent resolutions by UNESCO and the recent statements by Amnesty, and you'll see a very clear political bent. So let's leave all these things and let's go straight to the point of the issue of negotiating the issue of Jerusalem. This is the point, including the issue of the holy places. Now, this is something that both Israel and the Palestinians have agreed to. And if and when this happens, then we won't see the type of situations that we're seeing today. But in the meantime, there is an absolute necessity to protect people from being shot by terrorists using the mosques as shelters. This is something that nobody accepts, not even Saudi Arabia, not the Vatican, not anyone.
All right, Professor Mustafa, the insinuation there, I suppose, or the position there that Amnesty, UNESCO, even human rights organizations have a political bias when they talk about Israeli settlement activity in East Jerusalem changing the nature of the city. Does Ambassador have a point?
The language that these UN resolutions, both General Assembly and United Nations Security Council, and also Amnesty International, and all International Criminal Court of Justice, all of them use the occupied as a legal term. Occupied is not really politically charged. Of course, if it makes basically Israel uncomfortable, because really it's an occupation. But the larger picture, when we speak about Jerusalem, Israel confiscated 86% of the public land of East Jerusalem in 1967. They left us only 14%, and even within the 14%, they make it really difficult for us to acquire the appropriate permits. Let me just point to something really iconic. Ehud Olmert, when he was mayor, before he became prime minister, he's on record saying that 96% of public parks are in West Jerusalem. This is really, what could you say in every single respect, with whether it's basically maternity clinics, whether it's public libraries,
let me interrupt
public
you,
schools, which we have.
Professor Mustafa, if I may. I guess the Israeli comeback on that would be, as we're hearing from Ambassador Alan Baker, that right now the city should be subject to negotiation, and that means the whole question of occupation is mute.
Yes, well, that's what I'm saying.
Let's give Professor Mustafa a chance. I did present the Israeli narrative, Ambassador Alan Baker. So let me give Professor Mustafa a chance to come back in on that.
Okay. Well, even if it's really a matter of negotiation because of the Oslo Accords, that does not change the legal situation under international law. This is the point. The people can negotiate whatever they would like to negotiate, but under international law, there is specific, category. What's going on in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, falls under basically the term occupation, and Israel is responsible as. Let me put it this way: Israel exists. I'm sorry. Legally, it's a de facto existence. It's a de facto.
Okay, let's give Ambassador an opportunity to come in. That I will come back to you, Professor. Go ahead, Ambassador.
Professor Mustafa, I respect you very much, but I suspect that you're not an international lawyer. I am an international lawyer, and there's one thing that you have to know, that as soon as there's an agreement between two sides, this agreement overrides. It's called lex specialis in Latin. It overrides any other arrangement that may exist. And the fact that the Palestinians and the Israelis have agreed between them to divide up the areas of the West Bank and Jerusalem basically means that this overrides any of the General Assembly and Security Council resolutions that you seem so fond of quoting, none of which, by the way, are mandatory resolutions. They're all recommendations.
Ambassador, could you quote which agreement are you referring to? There is no final status agreement between, but there is no final, that is not a final status agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis, as you put it, to divide up the land.
No, not yet. This is the whole point.
That is an agreement in which the PLO was recognized as a representative of the Palestinian people, and the PLO recognized Israel's existence. That was not a final status agreement to carve up the land.
No, of course not. But this was an agreement that would divide up the area of the West Bank pending the outcome of the permanent status negotiation. And here I'm quoting from an article that's written there, which I participated in drafting.
All right, let's give Professor Mustafa, I promise I'll give you a chance to come back in on that. Go ahead, Professor Mustafa.
I think basically it's very clear the Israeli government continues to blur the lines between the Palestinians and the Israelis by continuing to build colonies in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank, land grab. This is exactly where the wall, the apartheid wall, the separation wall exists. It's basically on the edge of urban.
Ambassador, give him a chance to finish. We let you finish. Go ahead, Professor.
But he's spouting propaganda. Come to the point of the discussion.
Let Professor let the Professor continue. We'll come back to you if there's time.
Even the Israeli army just most recently agreed that the proposed increase in building permits for the city of Qalqilia would not basically jeopardize any security issues. Nevertheless, under the pressure of the Israeli settlers' political bloc, Netanyahu yielded to their pressure and he postponed the vote on such a very small issue like the expanding the permits, increasing the permits for the city of Qalqilia.
Okay,
it's obvious.
Okay, we've got about a minute left, so I'm going to try and give 30 seconds to each of our guests. Human Rights Watch ambassador, in its report in 2017, said the same thing, that the transfer of population that Israel is carrying out is in violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Surely your position is not that all these human rights organizations have misunderstood international law.
Well, it's their interpretation of what they think. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is the correct interpretation. And Israel considers Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention to be something that was drafted after the Second World War to prevent the forcible transfer of millions of people that was carried out by the Germans.
Okay.
So it's completely irrelevant.
We've got only 20 seconds left now. Let me give 20 seconds to Professor Mustafa. Just 20 seconds. Go ahead.
The Israeli Human Rights Watch group B'Tselem publishes statistics about Jerusalem, and one of these statistics about the revocation of residency, revocation of IDs kicking out Palestinian Jerusalemites from their own city. In the year 2008, they revoked the IDs of 4,577 Palestinians from East Jerusalem. These are Israeli numbers. If Israel is determined on making peace with us, then why they are kicking us?
We do have to end the show. Appreciate that there's a lot more that everyone would like to say on this, but for now, let's thank our guests, Mustafa Abu Sway and Ambassador Alan Baker. And thank you too for watching the show. You can join us again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com, or for further discussion, go over to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Sami Zaidan, and the whole team here, for now, it's goodbye.